So I think we can get started because it's late in the day. The last session of Product Camp is always the die-hard few who are committed or are in from out of town and don't have kids to go home to. So the session is about hiring product teams and interviewing to be hired for a product team. So we have, as part of our group, one of each. We wanted to give you the opportunity to look at both sides of it. So I'm Jessica Sweeney, and I've been doing product management and product marketing for more than 20 years. Mostly B2B enterprise software, most recently IoT, lots and lots of SaaS stuff. And I have built, hired, mentored, developed, and occasionally fired product teams at 3 different companies. And with me is my co-presenter, Vicky.
Hi everyone, I'm Vicky. I recently graduated from product school and I actually stumbled upon product management by accident about 2 years ago when I was in a developer boot camp. I figured that engineering was actually not for me, but building technical products was definitely something that excited me. I have a background in developer marketing, working at Salesforce, and I would like to share with you a refresher for senior PMs with regard to the interview process and some experiences of my own with regard to the challenges that I've personally faced in the interview process.
So because this is sort of yin and yang, old and new, young and not quite so young, then we want there to be something for everybody. And one of the first questions I have is, who here is here because you are interviewing for a job as a product manager, that you would like to be hired somewhere as a PM? Okay.
So not right now, but maybe sometime.
But in general, so you have that in mind. So you're here in the perspective of, what do I need to do to move my career forward? Okay. And who here are hiring or expect to hire soon a team of product managers? You're responsible for the hiring of the team.
Me.
Yeah. Are you hiring right now?
No, not right
But you
now,
expect
but when
to.
I go back to offshore,
Mm-hmm.
so hopefully I'll be joining my product management team. I hope to be, more senior role and get one of the people.
Excellent. Good. And Robert, you had your hand up too. Are you hiring a product team?
Yeah, I hired my first team within the last couple of years, last 2 years, and then I guess I just wanted to see your perspective on product management hires.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody, who else had their hand up that they expect to hire, or they are hiring, or they have hired in the past? Okay. And how many aren't product managers, but they're hoping to become a product manager? Yeah? And what's your background, Melissa?
Finance and analytics.
Great. So we'll talk a lot about what that path is from finance and analytics into product management. And
user experience.
excellent. UX to PM, very common path. So you've seen a lot of people go that way, I'm sure, and we'll talk some about that too.
Sure.
Excellent. Anybody I haven't covered? Some of you, you're not job hunting, you're not hiring. You are
Supporting the
hired.
home
Yeah.
team.
Alicia came to my session, so because I went to hers. Who else?
Moderately happy in my current role.
Okay. All right. Great. So I'm going to start by turning it over to Vicky. That's the one.
Okay. All right, so what I'd like to do is dissect the PM role. Last week, I kind of figured something out. I don't like the product manager title because when you dive deeper into a job description, it doesn't say product management anywhere. You're really specializing on something, and that's what I'll narrow in on in this presentation. So I want to talk about these 4 aspects of product management. There's domain expertise, there's technical, there's technical enough, and being able to identify and be confident in sharing your complementary forte for product management. So the first one, you have domain expertise. So if you want to be a product manager and you haven't done that in your previous roles just yet, or you haven't built a product as an entrepreneur, do you already speak their language? And if you don't, or if you do, you have to prove that in the interview process. So for example, Melissa, you said that you have a background in finance, and what was the second piece? Analytics. So for you, you could potentially find a product management role in one of those two areas and prove that you have domain expertise in that, and then so that you're well equipped to build product within those realms or one of those realms. And for you as well in design. I would say for you, maybe going to a boot camp to get the lay of the land in regards to product management might be something that you want to look into. We could talk about product school if you want after the presentation. I've done a lot of my research, and I'm also a guinea pig for product school. So. Yeah, so what's your focus? Just make sure that you can share that, whether that's being from B2B, B2C, whether you have a finance background, healthcare. My product school instructor actually was a senior PM at Amazon, and she's currently a PM for a dog walking company. She loves dogs, and it fits her personality. So find your focus. The second one is you're technical. So if you have a CS background, if you have an engineering type background, then you're pretty much golden in Silicon Valley. But another thing is that you have to also focus on the other aspects of product management. So beef up on other skills so that you're not seen as an engineer, you're seen as an up-and-coming product manager because you know how to talk to designers, you know how to talk business, and you know how to talk design. The third piece, this is where I can connect with a lot because I don't have a technical background. I have international economics and business management background. So, do you understand engineers? I've done my due diligence. I went to a boot camp to learn software development, more on the web development side, and I tried to build a startup of my own. So that speaks volumes in my resume, and those are talking points that are important when I have interviews. And they also want you to be able to pick technical products up quickly. Are you able to learn? Can you speak with the engineering team? And can you call on their bluff?
You know engineers bluff.
Calling on their bluff is
And I mean, it's to play devil's advocate, it works the other way around. Are you curious enough to ask questions, ask the right questions? Do you have the patience to work with engineers? It's not about telling them what to do, it's about working with them. Because at the end of the day, you're the boss of no one. And you take all the blame. And none of the rewards, because the reward is really for the team. So finding your forte is important. Like, do you have the entrepreneur experience? A consulting background helps as well. There's also design, analytics, marketing. As I mentioned in my first statement, product management, just get rid of that title. It's being able to find where your strong points are and being able to build products with that specialty you have. And just to recap, domain experience, being technical or being technical enough, and then finding your complementary forte for product management. And hand it off to Jessica.
Sure. So Vicky mentioned this idea that whatever background you come out of, whether it's design or analytics or engineering, and in Silicon Valley we certainly see more engineers by far, you do have to round out those other skills. And those other skills encompass a vast swath of diverse skills. And so one of the first early movers in this space, I think I mentioned in our previous session, I think I took this training like 15 or 20 years ago, was Pragmatic Marketing, who came up with this framework. And it was one of the early attempts to really identify the truly diverse nature of responsibilities that product managers had. And they codified it, and this has had some evolution over the years, but not very much, a box here and there, but it's generally been the same since the beginning. But if we look at this, it becomes really clear to anybody who's actually tried to do these things that no one person can possibly be equally good at all of these skills. And so over time, there evolved different ways of breaking this up. So we saw, like, some people take the whole left side, and some people take the whole right side, and some people take the top of it, and some people take the bottom of it, and some people have little bits here and there that they specialize in. And one of the best practices that I have implemented successfully and I find easiest to understand is the product management triad. And that's the basic model of the strategy-focused leader, the technically focused PM, and the go-to-market focused product marketing manager. And that very often is then a reporting line triad as well as a functional breakdown. So you might have a director of product management who has reporting to them, a technical product manager who's working very closely with the engineering team, and a product marketing manager. But even this, when it became best practice, like 10 years ago maybe, is now out of date because our processes continue to move. Product managers who are committed to continual improvement have continually improved the practice of product management. So now we have product management in an agile world, and we're continually reinventing the way that we divide up this work. So now we have the role of the product owner. And this came up in Alicia's session previously, so I promised I had a slide on it. Somebody said, what is a product owner and how is it different from a product manager? Well, my slide is a product owner is not a product manager. And in fact, there's a wonderful article that I linked to in the slide notes. So if anybody wants a copy of the slide deck, it's the role of product management in Agile. It really goes into this and explores it. That's where I got this diagram from, and that's on the Pragmatic website. And so the idea is that in different organizations, we've had to draw these circles in different ways. And in startup organizations, what do? You can only hire one person, right? You're a startup. Everybody's wearing 18 different hats. And so you do have one person who's trying to do all of these things. So as you are building your team as the hiring manager, or as you are looking for jobs to take as the applicant, or you are looking for skills to build as somebody managing your career, you have to have this in mind. And unfortunately, the worst part of this is that we still haven't done what Vicky recommended, and I wholeheartedly endorse, getting rid of the title product manager. Because we use the word product manager to mean each of those jobs, and we use the word product manager to mean all of these jobs, and we use the word product manager to mean all of the whole job, doing all of it. So when somebody says, I'm a product manager, and they're at Amazon, then you know that they probably have an MBA, and they're really good at analysis, and they're probably not a coder. And if they say, I'm a product manager at Google or Facebook, you know they write code. That person has a CS degree and they spent 5 years writing code before they got that job. Or if they say, I am a program manager, you think, oh, well, you're not a product manager. At Microsoft, you say, oh, that's right, you're on these boxes now. So there's this confusion as we are approaching hiring a product manager. You go to your executive team and you say, I have to hire a product manager. Whatever that means. I'm applying for a job. I'm looking for jobs with the title product manager. Whatever they mean. So our definition of product manager, this is the handout you're going to get, by the way. I'm going to give you a printout of this. In fact, Jamie, if you could help me, I didn't know how many people, so I printed 30 so you can have extra copies. Product management originated in the 1930s. Actually, I saw an article as I was doing research for this session, which was like, well, product management isn't well defined because it's new. I thought, oh, honey, product management is not new. But product management is always evolving. So for the new product managers and for the old timers who've forgotten, I want to remind you that Procter & Gamble initiated product management in the 1930s. and we just take a step back to remember what it was originally, which is the person who had to coordinate between all of the different departments that were involved in the launch and management of a successful brand. They were originally called brand men. How do you like that, ladies? We could be brand men. And so that is the foundation of modern product management. And it's always stuck with me, this idea that I am the hub in the center of all these spokes. So that's my favorite diagram. Product management or pragmatic marketing, is looking at product management from the perspective of what are the jobs that you need to do, and I think that's very useful, and that is compatible with this hub and spoke model, which is looking at who are the people I need to coordinate with. Here's where it gets complicated. A product manager with that ultimate responsibility for the success of the product is the ultimate gap filler. So if there's anybody on that circle who's not doing their job, a product manager doesn't have the authority to fire them or to hire their replacement. We don't run the department, so we don't get to get more headcount to fill their ranks so that they can do their job better. Instead, what product managers do, you do the job. You don't have a UX designer, you do the UX design until you can get around to hiring one. You don't have a UX researcher, you go out and you do the research. I know product managers who, when there's a crunch, they sit down and they write code. And so that leads to this confusion because product managers very often need to be able to do all of these different jobs. We get job descriptions that are referred to among recruiters in the industry as unicorns. So I've talked to recruiters who say, I've had 50 interviewees in front of this client, and they've rejected every single one of them. They're looking for a unicorn. They're looking for somebody who can wear every single hat. I said on the first slide, that's what the horn is for. Like the horn holds all the hats that you need to wear as a PM. And so there are jobs that have gone unfilled for quarter after quarter after quarter. I'm always looking down in San Diego, where I'm from, to see who's hiring, what's going on, where are the major moves. I see a lot going on in the startup industry, and seeing who they're hiring is a really good indicator. And there are these companies that have had the same job advertised for a year. And I talk to the recruiters who work with those companies, and they say they're just looking for something that doesn't exist. And it's a trap we all fall into because we know that sometimes our product manager is also going to be the chief dishwasher and is going to fill the gaps whenever we need them. So we kind of need them to be able to do all this stuff. But that way lies disaster because you can't hire. So rather than...
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if somebody advertises a job for years and do not fill it out, what does that actually mean? I mean, I'm trying to understand. If that job is really needed, somebody would push buttons here and there and get that filled. But if not, what's the purpose behind that?
So in most cases, what you have is capacity constraints. So you have a product manager who is doing the job of 2 PMs, and they need to add another headcount to relieve the workload on that person. And so in the meantime, that PM who's in place is struggling along as best they can. In other cases, companies can do without product managers for a short time. And it's an interesting position to be in as a PM because this is actually in the appendix of a book I was reading on the flight up here. If you don't have a developer, you can't ship code. If you don't have a salesperson, you can't close deals and get revenue. If you don't have a UI designer, there's nothing to click on. If you don't have a product manager, you can get on okay for a little while. So these companies are in some cases overworking their existing staff, or they're making do without. And in that case, what you end up with is UX designers who step up and they do a little bit of product management, and product architects from the engineering side who step up and do a little bit. And you get sales teams who take over the customer feedback portion. And so everybody sort of closes in to fill the piece of that they're able to fill from their current role.
I just wanted to ask, like, considering the whole thing about a product manager being something like glue, just going in, filling in, holding everything together. But also the fact that now that most teams follow an agile-based model, what is the right org structure that you see working for B2B enterprise products? Like, I mean, that's
I'm
an
going
area
to
of
give you the most helpful answer ever. It depends. So let's talk about that. All right. So this is the worksheet, and this is the worksheet that came out of my work with the PMs that I mentor. So I'm part of Startup San Diego down in San Diego, and I just meet with on a regular basis first-time VPs of product management who, by virtue of the fact that they're in a 5, 10, 30-person startup, are doing senior product management work for the first time in their careers. And they have all come at product management from a different role. So in a lot of cases, as we've talked about, you can be an engineer who is writing the code, and you decide that you want to get involved in knowing what code to write. Right? So you're doing the how, and you want to get more involved in the what and eventually the why. You end up with the people who are on the front lines of customer contact, and those are especially your technical support and your sales engineering, who see the way that the product doesn't meet the customer need perfectly, and they decide they want to fix it. That's my own background. So I was a sales engineer, and I would go out and I would give the demo, and I could explain technically how the product worked. I worked closely with the engineering team. I was the demo master. It was so much fun. And then the customer would say, great, but here's our problem. And my job was to say, our product can solve that problem, whether it did or not. And I thought, I can do better. Why don't I make a product that actually solves the problem? And so that was my transition from the customer contact role into the product management role. I wanted to solve problems at scale. You also end up with UX designers who are very focused on the flow and the look and the total experience, and they're doing a lot of the what, and they very often want to move into the why. Is that your experience?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's in terms of solving user problems, so that's where the why comes in.
There you go. And then we also see a lot of folks who are business analysts, sometimes financial analysts, so Melissa, perhaps very close to your background, who are working out how a product can be profitable, or they're looking at the metrics of usage and doing the data analytics. And after a long time of looking at the data, you want to be the person who actually moves the needle. Is that your experience, or are you coming at it from a different perspective?
So trying to understand like the metrics and should like basically as an analytics person build dashboards. So it's like, is it moving or progressing, and more of that bean counting.
So you'll go from bean counter to person who gets yelled at when the beans aren't counting in the right way.
Yeah.
So when you come into product management from all these different perspectives, you bring with you the expertise that you had in your prior role. And so we can map that. So here's an example of someone who had a background in sales engineering, and so has very strong understanding and empathy with customers, good market knowledge, strong ability to create content, really good sort of evangelism, press, media relations, and analyst relations, sort of okay at research, not any talent whatsoever at graphic design, if these slides are any example, especially that unicorn at the beginning. Some understanding of engineering, but no real ability to execute on engineering. And so we can map out an individual's capabilities. And I'm not talking in this case about understanding. I know a lot more about engineering. I'm talking about ability to execute the role. How much code can I write? I understand the principles of good graphic design. How many paintings could I actually create? right? So I want to distinguish very clearly, we're talking about capacity to execute rather than understanding of the function. And so here is one version
So
of a product manager.
can I make a flippant comment?
Absolutely, I love flippant comments.
So if I want to interpret in one way, it basically means that you have to be really bad at engineering and graphics design to be a good product manager.
Nope, this is just a product manager.
Okay.
Whether this person is a good product manager has to do with another part of the analysis. Because here's another product manager. So that VP of engineering who I was working with when I did the first version of this was his map. And he looked at this and thought, okay, here I'm really good at engineering. Like I'm super strong, I could write code all day, like I'm gonna be a PM who writes code. And then we were able to look at all these other areas. And this is a very successful product manager. And then we have somebody who came out of the UX background. And this person is a very successful product manager. So we can take our own skills and abilities and we can map them onto this framework. And it helps to visualize where am I weak, where am I strong? And there's two pieces of information, there's two actions that you can take with that piece of information. So one is you can really clearly identify jobs where you will thrive. If you look at a job description and the things that they're asking for are really heavily weighted in the areas where you're strong, you know that you'll be a good match for that role. The other thing that you can do is use this as a career planning tool. So if you look at this and say, boy, I'm really good at all of these things, this might not be too far off of what your map might look like coming out of UX background. Then you can say, it would really bolster my ability to be a well-rounded contributor if I learned more about negotiating contracts or dealing with the legal aspects, writing the SLAs for my products. Or maybe I need to better understand how the sales team are closing deals and what putting together a new product offering actually looks like when I take that to market. Or maybe you just want to get better at pitching the press and analysts and being a better evangelist. So this can help you to visualize in a way that you can really sort of at a glance see where you can take yourself. From the hiring perspective,
So what is the must-have in this diagram for a product manager?
none of it.
No.
So this is only looking at one particular dimension of product management, which is that concept of PMs as glue. There's a whole other layer of product management that we didn't talk about that's covered more in the pragmatic marketing framework, which is what do you actually have to do? You have to have curiosity. You have to be analytic. You have to be outcome-based. So this isn't dealing with any of those soft skills that have to do with the type of person who's really good at being a product manager. This is about that gap-filling capacity. And people often get very focused on this gap-filling capacity, specifically when they're looking for a unicorn. And so in terms of avoiding that behavior where we are trying to hire a unicorn and being frustrated, as managers trying to build a team, we have to think about how do I fill all of these gaps. So to do that, from the perspective of a manager who's building my team, I need to think about all those other functions. And so I'm going to reverse the model and say now, instead of high capacity being on the outside, I'm going to say high capacity is closer to the center. And now I can build a model of my organization as it is today. And I didn't do slides on this, so I'm just going to whiteboard it. All right? So we're going to say, we've got our hub and spoke. And today, my engineering team is awesome. We've got very high capacity. We've got really good engineers. I've got a great VP of engineering that I work with. I have total confidence in their ability to build. I've got product management, but because I'm in a hypothetical startup, my hypothetical startup has a PM who's kind of overworked and doesn't really have enough bandwidth to do all of the things that need doing. We've got some corporate counsel who's looking after stuff, and we have very little need for a lot of work around SLAs and that sort of thing. I've got a non-existent product team. We haven't got around to hiring that yet, so there's nobody out there dealing with strategic partners or technical partners or the people I need for my whole buy, build, partner mix that I need to put together. I've got a pretty strong sales team, so they're going to be here. They first thing they needed to do was bring in revenue, so we've got good capacity there. Graphic design, yeah, I've got a graphic designer. They're pretty good. I've got no technical support at all, because again, we're a startup. We haven't hired that person yet. And over here, we've got middling capacity in the technical writing. All right, I didn't do all of those, right? So now I can draw not the capabilities of my individual, but I can draw this part here, the capabilities of my organization. So now I'm looking for a product manager who fills in some way this shape. I know that the product manager who will be successful in my organization, who will help me fill the gaps that I most need filled, is somebody who is going to be sort of generally this kind of amoeba shape. Or maybe I look at myself. So this was the conversation that I had with my green outline PM. And my green outline PM had the experience, I'll use black, had the experience of spending a lot of his time, oh well, never mind about the black, over here, because that's where his expertise was. And we saw that there was a huge overlap, and we just drew it out, crosshatched. And he saw instantly that he was spending his energy where he had excess capacity, and it wasn't necessary. So, I'm gonna be done talking because I want everybody to get a chance to actually try this out. So everybody should have a worksheet. You guys in the back, can we get a worksheet? Enough? Everybody should have a worksheet. We have lots of copies. And if anybody didn't bring a pen, I have a pen. Jamie caught buying pens. What color was like? Help yourself, bust it open. And here's the critical thing. There is nothing magic about this hub and spoke, right? I like made it up out of my head. So as you are thinking about this and looking at it, there are definitely things on there that are not relevant to you, and there are definitely things missing on there that are relevant. So those of you who are in an organization now, or have worked in an organization previously, that's all of you. I'd like you to start by mapping the capabilities of the organization. Do you have a big UX team with lots of people and lots of time and a big studio where they can do focus groups and eye tracking studies? Do you have a project management office that has project managers at your beck and call ready to track your every task? Do you have any project managers? Go around the circle and give it some thought. Do you have somebody who's looking at your SLAs and your user agreements? Who's doing that for you? Do you have user agreements? How about your technical writers? How about your content writers for your white papers and your blue sheets? How about your tech support team? Who's picking up the phone? Who's doing first line support, second line support, and third line support? Do you need a pen?
Yes, please.
Oh, we need more pens. There you go. Who else needs a pen? One in the back.
So we're mapping the organization.
Yep, the organization. And remember, the more capacity in that function, the closer it is to center.
Okay.
Right? So
So
if
like
you
you're
have,
really good at
if you
UX.
have a great UX team, it goes right up there.
Oh, closer.
Closer to the center, right? So I'll write this up here. For the organization, and this is capacity to execute. So actually I have a hidden slide. Jessica, do you have extra sheets? We have extras, yep. Jamie? Okay, so somewhere I had a list. Oh, things that you can add to the wheel. I just ran out of room, right? QA. Is QA important to your group? Do you have a QA team? What's your QA capacity to execute look like? Hardware, platform, finance. I left finance off. Who's doing pricing? Who's doing your conjoint analysis for your pricing models? Who's doing all your spreadsheets and your pivot tables? Information architecture. Do you have a team that's building your taxonomy? Do you need one? Data analytics. Who's looking at all of your Google Analytics documents or data, who's coming in, who's crunching numbers, who's building your spreadsheets and your dashboards?
Logistics.
Logistics, manufacturing, operations.
So should we be
Marketing.
should we be thinking of it as the product organization or the entire
The
company?
entire company.
Okay.
For the product that you are responsible for,
Okay.
right? So if there's another division that does a whole different product and they get a UX team that you don't get access to, don't think about those. Think about the people who are working on the product that you're working on. So who's got something? Who's got something that they want to share with us? Jamie has one. So is this your current company?
This is my current company. I've been with for 2 months.
And what are they really good at? And what are they really good at?
They're incredibly good at UX design, research, graphic design, content.
So they're really pretty.
They have a very, very strong team, yes. They do very good materials, and it looks really sharp.
Where are they weak?
They're very weak in customers, business development, partners, press. They come from a government background, so they've had government contracts. And so for them, the real world is racing up quickly. And so far as having a product isn't enough.
Nice. John, what have you got? Have you got an organization you're looking at?
Yeah, my current org, it's pretty decent at exec management, investors and board. Not as strong in project management, tech writing, UX design, research.
All right, so yours has a very different shape than Jamie's does. They're all unique. Who else has one they'd like to share? One more, yes.
So my organization, they have good engineering, so-so project management is so-so. Legal and contracts is really good investments. Executive management is okay. I don't know if I should make that comment, but I think they're also learning the ropes because executive management is also new to the product space. The analyst coverage and press coverage is good. Partners, no. Customers, we have a lot, despite, not getting our act together. I'm in fact surprised by how many customers we are managing. Market analysis, content, UX has to be improved tremendously.
All right,
Can you
good.
see the shape? For me, visually, it really kind of calls it out when I can see the shape. Starfish.
The starfish of need. So but we'll have product manager starfish. We'll have like unicorn, amoeba, starfish. So having visualized this now, on the same sheet of paper, if you'd like a different color pen, you can swap with a neighbor or we can supply you with one of our other colored pens. We have only black. So if you have a color other than, you want a color other than black? Okay. So here's a black pen, we have red pens, we have blue pens. So you can do it in a different color or not. Black. Oh, somebody else has to swap with you. Who has a different color? Oh, there we go.
use different
See, this is why we're all sitting next to each other. Yeah. If it's your personal pen, it's up to you to figure out who I handed it to and get it back. Do you need a pen?
No, I just realized I think I put my bag.
Not that one?
No, the,
Oh, the blue bag.
Yeah, I had my
Okay.
other pen.
Do you need a blue pen?
I'll take it. Well, I didn't mark it, so.
All right. But everybody else. Okay, so now think about yourself. And we're reversing the model, right? So this is going to be the mirror images. And this is your ability to execute, not your understanding of the function. And I think I should change the wording on the one that says customer, right? So customer is not how many customers you have. It's your ability to understand your customers. So your ability to empathize or to know their market. So like somebody who was a customer has perfect understanding of customers at the moment they take the job. That fades over time, but it's the ability to really talk to customers and understand them. Okay, so now we have better is on the outside and worse. Don't take worse personally, it's just, you know, the opposite of better. So worse is on the inside and better is on the outside. And be really honest as you can. So like, that's me. There's stuff I'm bad at. There's stuff I'm not as good at. We'll see. Questions? Thoughts? Suggestions?
Content.
Hmm?
Content. What is
Content generation, like writing white papers,
Oh.
providing the information that goes into the brochures.
Okay. I'm back.
It doesn't write.
I think you should.
Its capacity to execute gets it to
Sometimes they're a little open.
She broke it.
Oh, no, hang on, it was
She broke
unscrewed.
it.
Let's see.
Is that the, no, that's a done.
Done.
I'm done.
Want a blue one? Okay, we shared.
Aw, that's nice. Can we return it?
We didn't buy it.
Fair enough. Thoughts, questions? Does anybody have one they want to share? Brave souls that you are.
Why did you change the scale from inside out to outside inside?
To make them overlap.
Yeah.
So the idea is that the ability of the organization is around the outside of the circle. And so we could actually shade that in, as I did here. Like I can color it in with cross-hatching, which I would have done if I could figure out how to do it in slides. And then the space in the middle, we can shade in with the capacity of our product manager or our product management team. And if we have perfect alignment, there's no gaps. If we have excess capacity, we have overlap, where my red and my blue make purple. And we can visually identify really easily where there's a gap between my organization's ability to execute and my product manager's ability to execute. So when I say gap analysis, it's very much visually giving me visual gaps that I can see at a glance. So who has one they want to share? Someone be brave. This is mine. I've already shared mine. What have you got, Alicia?
Okay. okay. I don't know how to really explain it though. You can talk to it.
Okay, which color is
So I'm red,
So
and
you're
my
red.
company is blue. So I'm pretty strong at like dealing with partners and doing market research and talking to customers, going out and doing interviews and stuff like that. I came from a marketing and business background. I have an MBA. I did not have a technical background, but our company is very strong at that. We have lots of engineers. We have people who will build it. What we don't have is people to support it and also go out and talk to customers. So.
All right. So if we're looking at the gaps here, we can see pretty easily where we can fill these in. So you are
I'm red.
and the company is blue. So here we can see we have a big gap where Alicia's ability to fill the gap as the official gap filler, chief gap filler as product manager, doesn't stretch out to meet the need in the organization, the lack in the organization. So there we can see, Alicia, what are your options here? What could you do?
Tell them they need to hire somebody.
Tell them they need to
Because
hire
I'm not
somebody.
doing it.
Right, exactly, perfectly valid response. So when we're hiring a PM team, maybe if you had the opportunity to hire a second person, you would know to look for somebody who has the strength in that area to help fill that gap in the PM team. Assuming that you don't have the influence or the authority to actually get another technical writer.
No, I don't.
Okay, and then where do you have excess capacity? Really, you've got some excess capacity where I've done different squiggles. So those are areas where you can depend on the people around you, or you've got some more flexibility in how you define your job because you're not overstrapped. So questions about how we're using this to visualize the gaps in the functions of the organization? Sure. Thank you. Thank you for sharing it. Anyone else? Who's not when they're willing to show? They're still working. Robert, I see you putting in the crosshatches. That's awesome. Show us what you've got.
Okay, so walking through it, I think our organization's pretty well distributed. My team and my expertise is more on the design and engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other team members, like we're heavy in marketing, so we have like business development, partnerships, press, that's all covered, legal. Technical writing is not something that we deal with since we're a consumer product.
We can just cross that off. That doesn't matter. Nice. So as you're looking at that, what does that tell you about how to develop your team or how to grow your team?
I think we could be stronger on like more of the market analysis, like the traditional like going outside and talking to end users. Yeah.
So keeping in mind, we're doing this unweighted, and you made a really good point, which is that as a consumer organization, you don't have technical writing.
Yeah.
So there are areas in this hub and spoke model that are more and less important. So the overlay on this is having recognized the gap or the excess capacity. It may be that what you want in the areas that are crucial to your success is lots of extra capacity. And the gaps in the areas that are totally unimportant to your business are perfectly fine to leave as gaps. But the tool is meant to allow you to visualize that and acknowledge that and do it in a purposeful way rather than trying to get that PM who does all the job, that unicorn that is so impossible to hire. So this is a new tool, and I'm really interested in your feedback about how it could be better and whether it met a need, whether it was useful for you, whether it duplicated something you already knew, whether it was, what? Could it be better? How? We're all product managers. We want to iterate. So how would you iterate on this as a tool that you use?
I think it was overall like an interesting way of looking at it. But yeah, the scale was kind of, I wasn't thinking about what the next step was going to happen. So I think my scale on both sides is kind of strange. So maybe like putting in like preset dashes, like 5 dashes, and then trying to baseline like what's your weakest and what's your strongest, and then filling in the gaps in between.
Awesome, all right. So maybe we start with a table, and then we move that table onto the circle?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. I appreciate that, thank you.
I think for a larger organization, you could possibly fall into the trap of them looking at it too much of what gaps do we have on our product management team, and instead of looking at the rest of the organization, because with larger organizations, you have more turnover, so you can't look for someone who's the exact fit. You need to look for someone who can fill in the pieces if someone on the team leaves.
Right.
So.
Okay, so are you thinking about projecting forward for people who might leave?
Well, I was just saying, to improve the tool, you have to be more clear about fill it in around the other departments, not fill it in around your PM team.
Okay, good, that makes sense. Excellent, yeah.
So what I'd like to have seen is, prior to this, is to kind of have like some questionnaires where you kind of score and rank, kind of like that table.
Yeah.
And then from there, move it on here, so it gives more depth to like legal and contracts, right? Like you said, it's SLA and user agreements, and I didn't think of that when I saw that, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did work on some, SLAs and things like that. So,
Okay,
so some type of like,
defining the terms.
yeah, just kind of like question, kind of like, have you worked on this, it works, give yourself this, or some,
All right.
just broad brushstrokes.
Good. And I think part of it too is what I'd like everybody to do is use this as a framework, but fill in your own. So this is a sort of for inspiration only, but I think if we develop it to be more fully fleshed out, then yeah, definitions, absolutely, I understand.
Have you thought about using this in the hiring process? Like having them fill it out before they go into the interview, or?
So we haven't gotten to that point because it's new enough that we don't have enough confidence really in using it in that way. I don't see why we couldn't. Once we sort of refined it more and, defined our terms more clearly. I have in the past used the pragmatic marketing framework for that purpose. So I actually, in hiring my team, would have them as part of the application process, rank the ones that they were best at and the ones that they were worst at. It was onerous though. And the feedback I got from candidates is that is one hell of a long list.
Yeah.
And, to some degree, they're applying for a job, so they should be willing to fill out a long form. But on the other hand, recruitment is also a sales pitch to the candidate. And if I really want a candidate to join my team, I need to meet them halfway. So I got really mixed feedback on doing it that way.
It does seem useful, I think, as a candidate going in the door. As you said, they're always looking for unicorns. In the way I think I see in engineering organizations is they're trying to hire something they don't know a lot about and don't understand, so there's a lot of resistance. So if you can come in understanding, hey, this is a big problem, and you're not going to be able to check all the boxes, but here, this is my perception from talking to everybody. You tell me how accurate this is, and these are my strengths. There's another aspect as well in that I think you may be weak in an area but passionate about it. In a way, it's past experience, and you may say, oh, I'm not great at this, but I really love, this is the thing that gets me up in the morning and I love doing. And so that's the area, you could say I'm a great fit because I love this. It's the thing I'm doing the most of now.
Excellent. Yeah, very much what Vicky was talking about, finding that area where you're passionate.
Yeah, and for this, I think it's a great overall framework. I think for a given organization, let's say for a bigger one, you might be able to prune this down to just those attributes that the hiring manager really cares about for that particular role, and then you can map it that way. For a startup, you might need to do something like this, I guess, but say hypothetically you're doing a SaaS startup, you may not need the graphic design or possibly the content, and you can strip those out.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it is worth acknowledging that this was designed primarily for startups, and it works much better for startups than it does for very large organizations. I think when I look back on my experience at a very large organization, I mean, like a 30,000 person company, my box of things that were left to product management would have been like that big. Because we did have that like 40-person UX team and the 40-person customer support team and the 40-person project management team. So that's a really good point. Maybe we go back to the pragmatic framework for the big companies.
I wanted to say that I'm really impressed by how well you guys defined the arms. Like that's a really good list of things. There were a couple things that I was thinking of as I was going through this about things that magnify, like things that make a candidate jump to more usefulness, even despite maybe being weak on some of these categories. One is they work for a competitor and you're considering hiring them. Another thing, they know people in your organization. And I don't know how those fit into any of this, but I wonder if those people are exempt from this kind of analysis. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and there's a whole separate discussion we could have about the idea of hiring from competitors and hiring from customers. I put them both in the same bucket.
Yeah. Or hiring friends of the people in your organization or something.
Yeah, and that gets at a lot of the softer skills that I think, Subrata, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
That you had brought up earlier, like where is that on this map? And I think that's a different map. So those things that are not related to that coordinating role as it was originally laid out as a brand man. Any other feedback? Fantastic. All right. Well, we've got extra copies of the spreadsheet, and I plan to update the website for Product Camp. So I'm organizing Product Camp San Diego. You can see it's on the bottom there. So I will, not today, because I'm going to happy hour, put a link up on the Product Camp San Diego website as a shameless attempt to get you to come to the website and, I don't know, like us or follow us or tweet us or send your friends in Southern California to our event in October. But I'll put the slide deck up so you can download it and have access to this. And I encourage you, please, to come back to me with more feedback. And I'd like this to be a tool that is useful for product managers who are building teams so that we can be more efficient and get away from that unicorn mentality that stops really talented people from being brought into organizations. Right, so from Vicky and myself, we wish you happy hunting. And recommended resources, some of the information that we used came from Cracking the PM Interview, which is a really useful book, even if you are not interviewing. I read it as a hiring manager and found it to be immensely useful. And then Pragmatic Marketing does an annual survey, and one of the things that they focus on is the very, very wide diversity of job responsibilities, including the diversity in reporting lines. So where does that person report? And so those are both very useful tools as you're thinking about this. Awesome. Oh, and I added this after the keynote. Please fill out the survey. We would be delighted if you guys gave us a 10 on the ranking, because we don't know what the prize is, and I want to find out. It'd be really neat to get the prize. So, thank you very much.